The things she remembered. She still remembered it, the fear, the hope, the pain when she found out he was gone. She remembered not understanding what was going on, that the yelling nurses scared her, and that he wasn't there to hold her. Eventually, when it was all over, her mommy tried to explain through teary eyes what had happened, but she didn't understand. "Where's Daddy?" She remembered her questioning look as she stretched out her hooves to her mother for comfort. Her mother's silence was enough to tell her that her daddy would not come back, and then they held each other for comfort and cried. Eventually, when she was a little older and just learning how to add her numbers, she would come home to a house full of doctors and learn to subtract. She remembered the day, how the sun high in the sky was blocked out by the enchanted air balloon of a Cloudsdale funeral. She remembered it floating away, taking her mommy up to the heavens where she could live with Daddy forever in the endless display of stars and comets. She remembered sadly trotting home that night, and then how she was stopped and told she no longer had a home. She remembered screaming and kicking and trying to get away, and she remembered the unwavering apathy of the stallions as they took her to a school for fillies, where she learned about sewing and etiquette and lived out her foalhood. She remembered the days she was sent to flight camp to make friends, her instructor said, when really she knew they couldn't care less. She remembered the bullies and their callous remarks. She remembered the days spent hiding in fear, and the days spent in pain because she didn't. She remembered the colts and their joking cruelty, and the filly and her courageous loyalty. She remembered the race and her fall, and how no pony cared, and no pony missed her. She remembered her cottage set near the woods where her animal friends could visit. She remembered her adventures and her friends. She remembered when they freed the moon and resolved chaos. She remembered her friends' love and her friends' kindness. She remembered their faces and treasured their words. She remembered her colt friend, an apple among lemons, how she cherished his loving touch and his caring words. She remembered his soft voice and his hard conviction. She remembered the hoof band and the proposal. She remembered her joy and how it was unsurpassed by any other. She remembered their excitement, their eager anticipation, and she remembered how their union was not to be. She remembered the lights and the nurses, and she remembered the news, how they told her that her life was nearing its end, that her heart was dying. She remembered the coming surgery and the tears it entailed. She remembered asking him if everything would be all right, and she remembered his silence, how he couldn't meet her eyes. She remembered the pain she felt as he left, because she didn't know that even as she was sedated, he was going into his own surgery, to give her the heart she had stolen long ago. She remembered the tears and the begging, the pleading to return the life he gave. She remembered her refusal to believe, even as he was lowered into his beloved earth, that he could be gone. She remembered the seed that was planted as his grave was filled in. She remembered the care that she gave it, and the tree it grew into, and her long evenings spent beneath its branches, his branches. She remembered the prodding, the gentle persuasion of her friends. She remembered their sympathy for her plight, but their caring was enough to put an end to her moping. She remembered the parties and the dances. She remembered the colts she met and the ones she couldn't. She remembered the joy she had, but the reservedness it retained. It was for him, always for him. She remembered the hospital, the first hospital in her life that didn't take. She remembered her dedication to him as she hoof-built it, raised it, and dedicated it to him. She remembered the animals that came and the ones that couldn't, and the same endearing love that they all received. She remembered the other stallion, his love for animals of all kinds, and his mission to serve others. She remembered her self-denial when she realized she loved him, and the joyful acceptance when she realized that her first love would approve. She remembered their shared evenings, their shared lives. She remembered the second proposal, the golden hoof band of such sentiment and the love it was imbued with by him. She remembered how he proposed beneath the tree, and how with joyful tears she accepted the offer and the loss of her first lover long gone. She remembered their marriage and their vows. She remembered the love, the joy, and the hope. She remembered the wanting, the needing, the extra love that they needed to give. She remembered the child, the 11 months of trial for a life of joy, She remembered their filly as she grew up, and how they were always proud of her, and had much reason to be so. She remembered the loving guidance she gave, and the sometimes painful rebuttal she received. She remembered the day her filly left the house, a mare in the eyes of the world, but always a filly in the sight of her mother. She remembered her filly's marriage. She remembered the ecstatic grin of her filly as she stood at the altar, making the same vows her parents had long ago. She remembered her filly's searching eyes, seeking out her parents' final, reaffirming sign of approval. She remembered meeting her filly's eyes and giving her the loving consent that was sought. She remembered her filly's I do and the undeniable surge of love and pride she felt. She remembered her first grand foal, the anxious excitement and inevitable acceptance that she was growing old, and she remembered her incomprehensible love for him. And in the shadow of her great joy, she remembered the sickness and the disease, how it took her husband. She remembered her pain and grief as yet another pony moved on to where she could not. She remembered crying over his body and crying more. She remembered the closing coffin, how she couldn't bear it, how she closed her eyes and nearly snapped with a resounding click of the lid's lock. She remembered her crying and crying and crying. She remembered her loved ones' tries at comfort and their words that she so blatantly ignored. She remembered laying there on the ground, long after the completion of the ceremony, and deep into the night's descent into darkness. She remembered waking in the morning and slowly, warily trotting back to her cottage, how her old bones ached to protest after the hard night outside. She remembered helping others, trying to lose herself in service so she couldn't lose herself in misery. She remembered the kindness she was shown and the love she gave back, until at last her life was nearing its end. She remembered the news, a final gift to her dying body. She remembered hearing of her newlywed grand filly's leap into motherhood, and she remembered asking to see her great grandcolt. She remembered how he was brought to her by his mother, handled like a fragile gem. She remembered holding him in shaky hooves, his newborn form held in stark contrast to her own dying body. And then she remembered telling. She remembered cradling him and telling him of the wondrous things he had in store for him. She remembered the stories, the ones she had lived and her filly had been told, and that her great grandcolt needed to hear, of love and friendship, of new friends made and old friends gone. She told him of the lessons they learned and the letters they sent. She told him the things he would need to understand how to love, the things he would acquire through life, and the things that through acquiring would make his life worth living. She told him of honesty and the strength it took to bear, even when the truth was harsh. It would in the end be his greatest tool against the lies of the world. She told him of loyalty and the fear he must conquer to possess it, how even when the greatest of evils turned against him, the loyalty shown to his friends would return to keep him strong. She told him of generosity and the selflessness he must have to provide it, how if he gave his all to his friends when he needed it, they would give their all back. And in the end, this combination was infinitely greater than the initial sacrifice. She told him of laughter and of the openness he must have to procure it, how when the fears and doubts of the world oppressed him, he need only laughter to be happy. She told him of kindness and the trust he would need to show it, how when he was exposed to the world's cruelty, those whom he showed kindness would be the first to back him up. And then she told him of the magic of friendship, and how when ponies banded together, each bearing the aspects described before, they would be more powerful than they could possibly imagine, and that by upholding their values, their virtues, and each other, nothing could stand against them. And then she gave him back to his smiling mother, her precious grand filly. She gave a smile and a sigh, and then finally, when she had given all she had to give, she looked upon those she loved so much, and dreamt. She dreamt of, and for, those she was leaving behind. She knew that life would be tough, and that they each had trials ahead of them, and she knew that if they shared their love, they could be strong. Then she left her dreams of the past behind, and dreamt to her future. She dreamt of her parents, their love and their sacrifice. She dreamt of her 2 stallions, their loyalty and their kindness. She dreamt that they beckoned her to join them, and she did. And as she held them in her hooves, and her in theirs, She wept, not tears of sorrow, but tears of joy, for she knew that they would never leave her again, and someday, when those she had left were done remembering, they would join her in this bliss, this place beyond pain, beyond life. They would feel the love, for only love could exist here, and they would know that they had earned it. Yes, there had been mistakes, and they had fallen short at times, but when they fell, they did not give up. They climbed back up, lifted by those whom they loved, for she knew that those who loved you would never let you down, and that made the pain of living worth it. And only then she had discovered this great truth and understood the power of love. Was she able to come to terms with the thing she remembered.